Hey everyone, today is Tuesday, May 19th. I should be looking at my watch before I'm telling you what the date is, huh? Anyways, can you believe it's gone from holy cow, is it cold outside to holy cow, is it warm outside and windy, huh? You can see by my face I've gotten way too much sun the last couple days. I think I mentioned this yesterday. I need to find my sunscreen. I have about 10 bottles of it somewhere. I don't know where they are though. So, anyways, hey, I'm going to read to you, again, going to try and get as much of the book done between now and the end of the week. So, I had mentioned something yesterday about school being done. The last day is this Friday. That's kind of true, not so true. All the work will be completed this Friday. I won't be assigning anything else. However, we do have school in some capacity next week. I will be doing a Tuesday and possibly a Friday check-in next week for you guys, but that'll pretty much be the extent of it. There's also going to be we're going to have an end of the year parade, and there's going to be drop off stuff for you to bring back your books and your Chromebooks and all that other stuff. But more information to that will be coming soon. So, all right, I'm gonna read to you guys. Winston's losing his mind over there for some reason or another. You can see behind me over here the maroonish colored wall with the blue tape around the edges and such. Been busy doing some painting during the distance learning, so I gotta get that tape off of there, I guess, huh? All right, here we go. Family. This chapter is called Family. It was safer to travel by night when the American planes weren't flying and the battleships weren't shooting. But Hideki was exhausted. He had to find some place to sleep. He broke away from the refugees and soldiers plodding south and soon came to a family tomb. Hideki almost cried with relief. He staggered inside, hoping the ancestors resting there would forgive him for invading their home for one night. But the ancestors weren't the ones he needed to worry about. The family who owned the tomb were already hiding there. There were 8 of them, a mother, father, grandmother, grandfather, and 4 small children, all huddled in the back. I'm sorry, Hideki told them. I just need to get in and out of the rain. I need to just sit down. He didn't wait for them to say yes. Hideki's weary legs gave out, and he flopped to the floor of the tomb. It was all he could do to keep his eyes open. He let his pack slip off his back for the first time that day, and he slumped over, absolutely exhausted. The family crept over to meet him and introduce themselves. Their last name was Miyagi. They each told him their first names too, but Hideki was too tired to remember any of them. They had been living in this tomb since the battle begun, they told him. Not one of them had been outside in 2 months. Boy, and you think your social distancing is tough, huh? They still had water, but their food had run out 5 days ago. The littlest of the children looked shrunken, like his body was eating itself from the inside out, and they all had hollow eyes and sunken cheeks. They look like ghosts, Hideki thought to himself, like their long-dead ancestors resurrected. Hideki thought of his father, perhaps never to be buried in the Kinashiro family tomb, and he sagged. Why didn't you evacuate? Hideki finally asked them. Why did you stay? Well, we thought the Imperial Japanese Army would protect us, Father Miyagi said. This is our home, Grandfather Miyagi added. This is where our ancestors live. Hideki closed his eyes and nodded. It was the same answer he would have gotten from any of the refugees screaming south. This is our home. The Japanese will protect us. One of those things was true, the other far from it. Are the Americans really coming this way? Mother Miyagi asked Hideki. Hideki was too tired to lie to them. Yes, he said. The children gasped and clutched at each other. Is it true what they say, that the Americans are monsters? Father Miyagi asked. Again, Hideki wanted to tell them the truth. But what was the truth? Yes, he told them. And no. When they're fighting, the Americans are killing machines. When they're not, they're like us. Hideki pulled a wet tangle of bandages from his head. One of their doctors fixed me when I was hurt, he told the Miyagis. And they'll give you food if you ask for it. Hideki pulled his pack around and fished out what was left of the ration boxes. They were coated with a waxy substance that helped keep them dry from the rain. The crackers were fairly disintegrated, but there was some chewy gray stuff, gum. A few particularly indestructible candy bars, and the meals in the tins. Hideki cracked one of the cans open, and Grandfather Miyagi cried out lovingly at the delicious smell. Hideki took a bite to show them it was all right and offered it to the family. It's not poisoned, Hideki promised them. I've already eaten one, and I didn't get sick. The Miyagis were too hungry to refuse. They fed the children first, and Hideki gave a second can to the adults. They all ate with relief, moaning gratefully. I don't understand, Grandmother Miyagi said when she had finished eating. She had black squares and circles and arrows tattooed on the back of her hands, just like the kind old woman who had tried to help Hideki get rid of at Ray's Mubai in the cave. You say the American devils were nice to you, but we were told that they would kill our babies. No, Hideki said. They're only monsters when they're afraid, just like the Japanese. All the Japanese and Americans care about is killing each other. You should surrender to the Americans. Surrender, Father Miyagi said. But they'll kill us. Not if you go to them now, Hideki replied. If you wait until they're fighting, until they've all become monsters, they'll eat you up. Do you understand? If you surrender to them without threatening them, they'll help you. Hideki's suggestion caused a great deal of discussion, but he was too tired to be part of it. After eating a bit of the candy bar, he laid his head on the American backpack and went to sleep. When he awoke, the Miyagi family had made a decision. We're going to surrender, Mother Miyagi said. Father Miyagi didn't look too happy about it, but there wasn't much to argue about at this point. They had run out of food. They wouldn't have lasted a day or two more if Hideki hadn't come along, and he was out of tin cans. Will you take us to the Americans? Grandfather Miyagi asked Hideki. It would be going backwards a little way for Hideki, but he agreed. He walked with the Miyagis out of the tomb, back out into the awful, rainy darkness, and led them the way that he had come. He wasn't moving forward anymore. He was going back for days now, and now he was going back again. But this time, it felt right, like he was working toward something at last. The American soldiers had made camp for the night. They weren't fighting, but they were weary. Hideki made sure the soldiers could see and hear them coming in the darkness, and soon flashlights were shining in their faces, blinding the poor Miyagis, who hadn't seen daylight in more than 2 months. The Miyagis had tied a white piece of cloth to a pole, and Father Miyagi waved it frantically. An American who spoke bad Japanese demanded to know who they were, and Hideki answered back in slow Japanese that they were Okinawan refugees. The grenade in Hideki's pocket had never felt heavier, more conspicuous. He was sure the Americans would see the bulge and shoot him, but after a tense few minutes of interrogation, the Americans finally lowered their lights and their weapons, and someone came to meet the Miyagis. Hideki tried to slip away into the darkness, but Mother Miyagi saw him. "Aren't you coming with us?" she asked. Hideki was tempted. He knew the Americans would give him food, shoes, a dry place to sleep. They would take him away from the fighting and the death. All this misery, all this suffering would be over for him. But not for Kimiko. No, Hideki told her. I have to keep going south to find my sister. I have to make sure she's safe. She's the only family that I have left. Mother Miyagi suddenly pulled Hideki into a hug. He was old enough these days to grumble through a hug from his own mother, but she was gone now, and it had been so long since he'd felt a warm embrace. Hideki let Mother Miyagi hug him, and he hugged her back. Now that we've met, we're family. Hideki nodded. Thank you, Hideki, she added, releasing him. I hope you find your sister. The American soldiers took the Miyagi family away to safety, and Hideki slipped away, headed south once more in search of Kimiko. Okay, the next chapter is called The Toilet Sauna. Yes, I said that correctly. The Toilet Sauna. 1 second, please. All right. The Toilet Sauna. Hideki slogged along the highway with thousands more Okinawans and Japanese. When the crowd reached Shikana, a village just outside Naha, some of the IJA soldiers detoured to a command post cave. Hideki's decision to go with them. Hideki decided to go with them. He was leery of setting foot inside another cave with Japanese soldiers, but he needed something more to eat if he was going to have the energy to find his sister. And the command post would have food. Just the thought of eating made Hideki's head swim and his knees weaken. Almost all of his best memories of food were wrapped up in the memories of his family. His little brother, Isamu, slurping long Okinawan soba noodles with him at the Lantern Festival. His mother dishing out a big bowl of Goya tempura, a sloppy, delicious mix of bitter Goya melon and whatever else was in season. Whenever their cousins visited, he and his father eating rafute, a brown sugar-glazed pork belly so delicate it fell apart in their fingers, burning his mouth on dried, deep-fried sada adagai, a kind of round donut ball. At the food stall with Kimiko on her way home from one of the Utah house calls. Hideki began to miss his family more than he did a warm meal. And then his appetite for food was erased completely by the sights and the smells that greeted him at the command post. The post was hot, humid, and stinky. Buckets of human waste festered in the corridors. Bags of fermented, ruined rice sat in puddles of water on the floor. Soldiers walked around in nothing but their loincloths to battle the heat, and no one here had bathed in months. The command officers took turns sticking their heads up the ventilator shafts, desperate for a breath of fresh air. It was a toilet mixed with a sauna, and Hideki gagged. One of the half-naked soldiers spied Hideki and grinned. "Hey, girls," he called. "One of your boyfriends has arrived." Boyfriend? Girls? What was he talking about? And then Hideki saw them. Nurses. If you remember, what was Kimiko going to do? Student nurses, like his sister. They were tending to dozens of injured Japanese soldiers, all laid out on boards. The Shikano command post was also a field hospital. Hideki rushed over to the nearest nurse, a girl, just a year or two older than he was. She was wrapping a dirty brown bandage around a soldier's wounded arm. Do you have a nurse named Kimiko?" Hideki asked her. "She's my sister." The girl shook her head. She hadn't heard of a nurse named Kimiko, and neither had any of the other people Hideki had asked. The excitement Hideki had felt on seeing nurses ebbed away like the tide, and the oppressive heat and stink returned. It was too much to hope that he'd find his sister in the first place he looked. "Come out!" someone yelled in broken Japanese through the cave entrance. "Come out with your hands up!" Hideki froze. The Americans were here, right outside the cave. They were calling for everyone to come out and surrender. We should do it, Hideki said to a Japanese corporal. We should all surrender. The soldier stepped away from Hideki in disgust. Surrender, he said. Never. Hideki grimaced. The IJA would never give up a command post without a fight, which meant they were all going to die. Hideki grabbed the arm of the first nurse he had talked to. Quick! Is there another way out of this cave, he asked. Yes, she told him. At the back. Go, go, Hideki told her. But the patients, the girl said. At the cave entrance, an American soldier peeked inside, his rifle raised. One of the guards at the door slipped out of the shadows and bayoneted him in the gut, and the American screamed. Everybody, get out, now! Hideki yelled, and suddenly the air itself exploded. Liquid, dripping flames came shooting through the entrance of the cave, torching the guards and everyone else within 20 feet. The sauna of the command post became an oven. A handful of grenades came clattering in with the flames, and ba-boom! The cave entrance collapsed in an explosion of rock and dirt. Hideki cried out again for everyone to run, but no one was listening anymore. Everyone was screaming and yelling and stampeding for the back of the cave. Soldiers pushed civilians out of the way, and wounded men on the floor cried out for help as they were trampled. Hideki pushed the nurses ahead of him toward the back of the cave. Something came pouring down the ventilator shafts above, splashing everyone ahead of him. Hideki recognized the smell from the car that had brought the Japanese photographer to his school. What do you suppose it is? Gasoline. The American monsters were pouring gasoline down the ventilation shafts. A box full of grenades clattered down through the holes, and Hideki knew what came next. He grabbed an empty metal cabinet that stood against the wall and pulled it down on top of himself and the nearest nurse. The cabinet had just banged down on top of them when, kafoom! The command post became an inferno. The explosion of the grenades touched off the ammunition the Japanese army had stored in the cave. The ground beneath Hideki and the nurse rocked like an earthquake, but the metal cabinet stayed on top of them, protecting them from the worst of it. Whoosh! The nurse next to Hideki screamed, and it was only minutes later that Hideki realized he was screaming too. Through their shrieking, they could hear the metal of the cabinet popping as it twisted and warped in the heat. Holy cow! Hideki and the nurse huddled closer as the heat bore down on them. Hideki's bare feet touched the metal cabinet, and it burned against his skin like a wood stove. With a start, Hideki remembered the grenade in his pocket. How insulated was the ceramic grenade? Would the intense heat set it off? What if he and the nurse had found a safe place in the fiery cave only for his grenade to blow them both to pieces? But there was no place he could throw the grenade now without lifting the cabinet. And exposing them to the flames. Hideki curled himself tight around the grenade instead, hoping to shield the nurse from the blast if it went off. And what seemed like years, after what seemed like years, the roar of the fire outside died away, and Hideki and the nurse stopped screaming. Hideki's throat was ragged and tight, and his whole body still shook with fear. But he was alive. He put a hand to the cabinet wall. It was hot to the touch. He lifted the cabinet with his back instead, putting Ray's backpack between him and the hot metal. No one had survived except Hideki and the girl. The bodies of nurses and soldiers lay all around them. The girl retched at the sight. Hideki didn't. Heaven help me, Hideki thought. I've gotten used to it. Hideki took the girl by the hand and ran as quick as he could for the exit at the back of the cave. And that is where we're going to end today. This is an intense book. I've read a lot of books about the Battle of Okinawa, And this is it's a fictional book, meaning that it's false, it's made up, but it's realistic fiction, and it's based, ladies and gentlemen, a lot, so much on what truly did happen during the Battle of Okinawa. So I've read a lot of factual type of stuff of things happening just like this. So can you imagine being Hideki, or the nurse, or one of the other Okinawan refugees, or a Japanese soldier, or an American soldier for that matter, huh? Tough times. So anyways, I'll get this posted, and I'll get the next 2 chapters read, maybe even later today. So take care. For a change, stay cool out there, huh? All right.